So, let's set the scene. You've been on YouTube long enough to know that the internet loves its lists of weird, wild, possibly deadly, definitely banned substances. Every week some guy with a mysterious voice churns out another top 10 drugs you should never take. Substances that make you see God. But real talk, most of those are just recycled stories about LSD, ayahuasca, laughing gas, maybe with a sprinkle of bath salts for zombie apocalypse flavor. But what if I told you there are secret drugs, lost recipes, government experiments, even ancient potions so bizarre, so history-changing, that they never even made it into the textbooks? Forget what you know about party drugs. Forget what you think you know about history. Because today, we're peeling back layers of time, Cold War laboratories, medieval battlefields, war rooms, occult lodges, to expose the secret substances that shaped empires, rewrote wars, and sometimes, just sometimes, almost ended civilization. No, this isn't a conspiracy theory. These are tales buried in old documents, court transcripts, and, occasionally, in the footnotes of research papers the government really wanted you to ignore. So buckle up. This trip has no seatbelts, no safe words, and the deeper we go, the wilder it gets. And of course, stick around to the end for a special dark history twist that even most historians have never heard. Let's get chemical. 1. Project MKUltra, the government's acid test. If you thought you've heard everything about LSD, think again. Yes, LSD, the famous turn-on, tune-in, drop-out superdrug of the 60s, had a past far darker and more bizarre than any Woodstock trip or hippie mural suggests. It starts with the CIA's notorious Project MKUltra, easily one of the craziest let's play mad scientist with taxpayer money adventures in modern history. The goal? Mind control. Truth serums. The perfect interrogation tool or a way to erase memories, implant new ones, or make an enemy spy betray his country without even realizing it. The means? LSD-25, borrowed from Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, plus a cocktail of other unpronounceable substances, secretly slipped into the drinks, cigarettes, or even meals of unsuspecting test subjects. Who were the test subjects? Anyone the CIA could get their hands on: prisoners, patients in mental hospitals, soldiers, prostitutes, the office janitor. Heck, sometimes each other. Picture this: you're in a bar in San Francisco. You think you're meeting a friend for a drink. The bartender, a CIA agent in disguise, spikes your gin and tonic with, say, 400 micrograms of LSD, about 8 times a powerful recreational dose. What happens next? Surprise! You start confessing childhood secrets to a potted plant, try to order 50 pounds of bacon at a corner deli, and then probably pass out under a table right as the Cold War rages outside. Anecdote. There's one famous case of a CIA scientist named Frank Olson, who was dosed without his knowledge by his own colleagues. He suffered a full psychotic break and ultimately fell out of a high-rise window in New York. The official story was suicide, but his family and many journalists believed for decades that he was murdered to cover up MKUltra secrets. By the late 1970s, the scale of the project was so massive, and so many subjects had suffered, that even the U.S. Senate had to get involved. In 1977, Senator Ted Kennedy led hearings that aired out the CIA's dirty laundry for all to see, including the infamous operative who admitted, "We didn't always check if the test subject would want a trip." How did people react when the truth finally came out? Let's just say, trust in the establishment never quite recovered. But here's the kicker: despite what you might see in Hollywood, there's no evidence the CIA ever perfected a mind control drug. All they achieved was a nationwide epidemic of paranoia, broken lives, and the plot for pretty much every government conspiracy movie since the 1980s. Fun fact: the phrase bad trip entered the dictionary thanks to hundreds of anonymous federal field reports where participants experienced acute paranoia, hallucinations, dissociation, and loss of time perception, all paid for by your tax dollars. Cliffhanger. So the next time you hear someone call acid a party drug, remember, its first trip was strictly business. 2. Magic mushrooms and the Berserker rage. Cut to Norse runes, wild-eyed Vikings, stormy North Sea. But let's go even further back, long before chemical labs, before governments, even before written law. The ancient world had its own brand of performance enhancers, wild, mysterious, and often weaponized. You've heard of Viking berserkers, the lunatics who supposedly howled, bit iron, and couldn't be harmed by sword or fire. Historians long thought these were just drunken warriors hyped up on testosterone and mythology. But archaeological evidence and some newly translated sagas suggest something far weirder: the Berserker brew, a psychoactive mushroom tea believed to induce trance states, invulnerability, and sometimes uncontrollable violence. The star of this ancient energy drink? Amanita muscaria, the classic red and white toadstool you've seen in fairy tales and Super Mario games. Unlike the more famous magic mushrooms, psilocybe, these don't give you calm euphoria. Instead, high doses can cause delirium, wild aggression, altered sensory perception, and the odd compulsion to bite your own shield. Not fun at a modern festival, but in a medieval battlefield? Maybe just what you needed. Anecdote. One medieval Russian chronicle describes berserkers as shaking with wild laughter, throwing off their armor, and crashing into enemy lines as if possessed by demons. Archaeological finds suggest some grave goods included dried mushrooms, far more than what you'd need for dinner. Historical theories. Modern pharmacologists debate whether Viking berserkers really turned themselves into super soldiers with psychoactive brews, but many agree that tales of invincibility and animal transformation likely have some root in truth. Either that, or they invented LARPing before it was cool. Cliffhanger. If you thought battling on shrooms was wild, wait until you hear what the Nazis did to win the Blitzkrieg. 3. Pervitin, the Nazi meth blitz. Fast forward 1,000 years, Europe, 1940. The Nazis are planning their infamous Blitzkrieg across the continent. Their secret advantage? It's not just tanks, not just superior tactics, it's tiny white pills called Pervitin. What is Pervitin? In one word, methamphetamine. The same family as today's crystal meth, only with a much shadier resume. German troops were issued millions of Pervitin tablets during World War II. Why? Marching 50 miles without sleep, fighting day and night, surviving shell shock, none of these things are particularly easy on the mind or body. And so, instead of traditional rest or rations, they got meth. Soldier testimony. One Wehrmacht officer wrote in his diary, "I felt as though I could run for miles, fight for days, never sleep, never need to eat. Then, when it wore off, I could only shake. Sleep was impossible, I felt my mind breaking." Downsides. Of course, not all was invincible soldier glory. Meth psychosis, paranoia, and breakdowns followed. Some squad leaders reported young men hearing voices, suffering seizures, or simply collapsing in a field, unable to speak or move for days. Copycats. The Allies quickly copied the Nazi trick. British and American Benzedrine pills kept pilots awake for 24-hour bombing runs. The Soviets soon followed suit, and for a few years, the skies over Europe and the Pacific were full of the world's first meth-fueled dogfights. Fun fact. After the war, leftover Pervitin tablets flooded the black market in Germany. Housewives, office workers, even students began using them as energy pills. In the 1950s, sales reps promoted them for vitality, mood, and weight loss. Yeah. Meth as a diet pill. What could possibly go wrong? Cliffhanger. So the next time you're pulling an all-nighter with energy shots, just remember, you're one chemistry tweak away from 1940s zombie mode. 4. The Black Death and the Invisible Enemies, Opium and Herbal Plagues. Jump to another era of chaos, the Black Death, 14th century Europe. As plague ravaged the continent, fear, superstition, and desperation turned people to all manner of miracle cures. Opium, derived from the poppy, became a staple of medieval medicine for calming, easing pain, and, occasionally, banishing evil vapors. Doctors prescribed opium for headaches, gout, melancholia, and for grieving widows vexed by evil spirits. Occult epidemics. But opium wasn't the only trick. Many physicians brewed theriac, a legendary potion supposedly invented by Galen, the Roman medical giant. It contained dozens of herbal extracts, sometimes even ground-up vipers. The real star, though, was always poppy juice. Anecdote. One infamous case, in Venice, circa 1400, several dying patients reportedly revived after a new form of theriac was administered, though modern scholars suspect they were merely knocked out with enough opium to drop a horse. Dark side. Of course, for every so-called miracle cure, there were abuses. In the Ottoman Empire, opium dens grew prosperous, serving sultans and slaves alike. In China, centuries later, opium would spark the two opium wars, destructive conflicts that redrew the map of Asia, toppled dynasties, and addicted millions. Cliffhanger. So next time someone offers you a secret ancient elixir, consider, is it a miracle, a myth, or just an early overdose waiting to happen? 5. The Soviet space-age chill pill, phenazepam. For this chapter, we fly to the coldest reaches of the Cold War, the space race. On both sides of the Iron Curtain, scientists, engineers, and warriors understood, space travel isn't just about physics, it's about psychological survival. Time alone. Isolation. Pressure. The right stuff sometimes needed a little help. Enter phenazepam. Invented by Soviet scientists in the 1970s, phenazepam is a benzodiazepine, same family as Valium, Xanax, and Ativan, but many times more potent, longer-lasting, and, famously, prone to causing both blackouts and mysterious memory gaps. Cosmonaut account. According to one declassified cosmonauts report, I watched the film. I believed I was in the film. The day after, I was told we had completed 3 experiments. I can only recall one. Spies and mystery pills. Phenazepam wasn't only for the stars. KGB operatives carried it for field use, calm the nerves before operations, cover trauma, erase inconvenient memories. Sometimes, though, they forgot what they were supposed to forget, leading to several infamous failed missions and embarrassing campaign trail photos. Modern afterlife. Though banned or strictly controlled in the West, today phenazepam sometimes pops up in online research chemical shops, often missold as Russian sleep aid. Hospital admissions from accidental overdoses are not unheard of. Cliffhanger. So, if you ever wake up with no memory of yesterday and a sudden desire to invade Finland, now you know whom to blame. 6. Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA's brothel of secrets. Let's dip back into pure, unfiltered American weirdness. Imagine this: the United States government, in the 1950s and 60s, ran its own illegal brothels just to experiment with truth drugs on unsuspecting citizens. Welcome to Operation Midnight Climax. And yes, that's really what they called it. The setup: CIA operatives rented apartments in San Francisco and New York, dressed them up as brothels, and hired sex workers to lure in targets. Customers would be dosed with LSD, mescaline, or exotic aphrodisiacs, then monitored behind a one-way mirror while CIA agents took notes on their increasingly bizarre behavior. From declassified files. One report describes a subject who attempted to interrogate a lampshade for several hours, then demanded to know if the lamp was working for the Soviets. Another describes a participant who, after tripping for several hours, simply began dancing wildly, prompting the agent to note, "Subject has shown symptoms of chronic disco fever." Aftermath. Years later, when Operation Midnight Climax was exposed, the American public was both scandalized and oddly entertained, forgetting briefly, perhaps, how many rights were trampled in the name of national security. Cliffhanger. If you think that's strange, you should see what happened when the British decided to treat their navy with gin and tonic for the nerves. 7. Navy grog and the Royal Navy's daily dose. True story: for nearly 3 centuries, the British Royal Navy handed every sailor a daily ration of rum. But not just any rum. This was Navy grog, a legendary, highly alcoholic punch designed to keep spirits high and mutinies rare across the 7 seas. Why? Sailing was brutal: disease, boredom, terrible food, constant risk. So, to maintain morale and quash dissent, the Navy's solution was a controlled daily dose of alcohol, often spiked with citrus juice, to fend off scurvy, and, occasionally, with liquid laudanum, a sweetened tincture of opium. Historical Observer. One 18th-century captain wrote, "The men are much less quarrelsome, more cheerful, and even the most contrary among them sing together at day's end." Downsides. After a century or so, the Navy realized too much cheerfulness sometimes led to accidents, such as ships crashing into rocks because the entire crew was merrily incapacitated. The rum ration was finally abolished in 1970, to universal outrage among British sailors and the world's pirates. Cliffhanger. If you think politicians and generals needed chemical help, what about artists, geniuses, and the world's greatest minds? 9. The Shaman's Potion and the Poison of Kings. Since the dawn of civilization, tribes across all continents created their own secret remedies, powerful plants that could heal, hallucinate, drive madness, or even kill. Among South American natives, the real bridge between the world of the living and the spirits has always been liquid ayahuasca. Unlike modern LSD, drinking ayahuasca involves strict ritual, physical and spiritual prep, and the perfect dose straddles science and art. Shaman testimony. A Yanomami elder told anthropologists in the 1980s. Without the vine, the soul stays trapped. The dead cannot dance, diseases do not reveal their origins. But not every mysterious beverage was about enlightenment. In kingdoms across Africa, Asia, and Europe, there were real royal potions whose secrets lay in passing unnoticed, slow-acting poisons, mushroom tinctures, or elixirs that triggered strange symptoms, tremors, delirium, insomnia, and a discreet death without a trace. The case of Rome's Black Widows. In ancient Rome, Locusta earned fame as the emperor's chemical engineer, designing deadly poisons that blended into wine or honey, acting so slowly even autopsies couldn't prove foul play. For decades, she was the most feared cook in the empire, celebrated, then executed, so her secrets would die with her. Cliffhanger. Next time you hear about healing herbs, remember that the origins of medicine didn't always separate cure and poison. 10. Kava, kratom, and the social drugs of paradise. Not every society was chasing ecstasy or conquest. On the other side of the world, Polynesian and Southeast Asian peoples sustained centuries of peace and community, helped along by natural relaxants. Kava, a drink pressed from the roots of Piper methysticum, literally intoxicated the Pacific for generations. Rather than seeking delirium, people wanted deep calm, relaxed muscles, numbed tongues, easy laughter. In Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, kratom leaves were chewed for pain relief, energy, building community, and simply passing the long afternoons. Testimony. When I chew kratom, my aches from the rice fields vanish and I hear the birds, said a Laotian farmer in a 1978 study. Modern politics. While the West was ravaged by alcohol, kava and kratom remained social cornerstones, at least until colonial officials and pharmaceutical companies tried, and sometimes succeeded, to ban their use, citing unknown effects or economic competition. Current consequences. Today, both plants live in global limbo, banned in some countries, freely sold in others, and probed by scientists hoping for non-opioid remedies for anxiety, pain, and depression. Cliffhanger. Maybe the real secret of a society isn't found just in its chemical war machines, but in its chosen ways to celebrate life. 11. The secrets of occult societies, from Lucifer dust to hermetic elixir. History's underground, where science, magic and power collide, brings an even stranger chapter: ritual drugs of secret societies. Rosicrucians, alchemists, Freemasons and occultists across centuries all believed that certain powders, bombs, and elixirs could unlock new portals, speed learning, provoke visions, spark inventions. Lucifer dust. In Renaissance France, among occultists, there circulated a reddish powder reportedly made by mixing mandrake, opium, belladonna root, and assorted hallucinogenic extracts. Those who sampled it claimed to converse with demons and wake up either brimming with ideas or with a shattered mind. The long life elixir. Hermetic manuscripts are full of recipes, infusions of exotic herbs, honey, cinnabar, mercury sulfide, and, sometimes, tiny doses of poison to strengthen the body. Supposed effect? Long life and brilliance. Reality, quite often, death by curiosity. The price of secrecy. Inevitably, these recipes ended up in dangerous hands. Rival learned men, curious servants, and the miracle potion was a murder weapon or a footnote in the criminal annals of Europe's royal courts. Cliffhanger. In the end, the real secret wasn't the substance, but who controlled access to wonder and to madness. 12. The war drugs nobody mentions, soldiers' chocolate. During World War II, along with the famous stimulants, there was a quieter innovation in military pharma: energy tablets tucked inside each Allied kit. These soldiers' chocolate bars seemed harmless, just chocolate, right? But they were laced with synthetic caffeine, dexedrine, a potent amphetamine, sometimes even codeine. Official purpose. They kept troops awake, on edge, even cheerful during 48-hour marches and artillery barrages. Declassified report. One Allied memo reads: Vigor increased, better resistance to cold, less fear under bombardment observed. Side effects. Of course, when the high faded, it crashed hard, paranoia, anxiety, and even full psychosis in the trenches, a hidden cost that never showed up in Hollywood's war movies. Aftermath. Thousands of veterans came home addicts. Some never lost their taste for amphetamines, unaware they'd been jump-started into the post-war era that would fuel the global pharmaceutical boom. Cliffhanger. What started as a military secret became, just decades later, a worldwide epidemic of prescription stimulants, and no one talks about it in the official histories. #13. DMT, the flying trickster and the stain of forbidden dreams. Imagine a drug that could rocket your mind into another universe, let you meet ancient spirits, live 1,000 lives in a handful of minutes, and then, boom, you're back in your living room, blinking at the clock. That's DMT, dimethyltryptamine, found in hundreds of plants, used in Amazonian rituals, as Jarima, Yopo, more, and rediscovered by Western psychonauts and scientists in the 1950s. Personal accounts. Indigenous stories tell of traveling with the ancestors and talking to the gods of thunder. Western users describe fractal visions, encounters with machine elves and beings made of language and light. Scientific trials. In early 1950s Britain, psychiatrists injected DMT searching for a model psychosis, hoping to cure schizophrenia. It didn't work out as therapy, but its reputation as the spirit molecule just grew. Criminalization. The power of these experiences scared authorities. DMT is forbidden almost everywhere except in a handful of religious exemptions, unusual agreements spanning science, tradition, and faith. Cliffhanger. What science calls hallucination, many call another reality, and the border between madness and mysticism may be only a molecule apart. Final reflection. Behind every lost drug is a people, a scientist, a soldier, or a victim who paid the price, seeking the divine, victory, oblivion, or just one peaceful night in the middle of chaos. The true secret of the drugs that changed history isn't in laboratories or rituals, it's in the choices we make, every day, between the courage to explore the unknown and the comfort of the established order. #Epilogue, the future of secret chemistry. The story isn't over. Today, scientists are hunting down drugs that sharpen intelligence, erase trauma, extend human life, cure addictions with microdoses, and maybe even cheat death for a few extra years. But if the past has taught us anything, it's this: every remedy carries a new secret, and sooner or later, each revolution repeats itself. For humanity, perhaps the greatest drug is still the hope for a magical future, or the thrill of just one more story waiting, forever, to be told. The secret isn't in the powder. It's in the story. Wait. Before you disappear into the shadows or start brewing your own suspicious mushroom tea, don't forget to hit that subscribe button faster than a Viking on berserker mushrooms. Like this video if you survived the parade of secret potions, no government experiments required. Comment below, what's the weirdest secret substance you've ever heard about? Or just type stick power if you made it this far. And remember, no matter what century, substance, or secret society, on this channel, the only trip we're taking is down the rabbit hole of bizarre history. Thanks for watching, and stay curious, just maybe not CIA curious.